Sarah Martinez pushed through the glass doors of Pine Valley shooting range at exactly 3:15 in the afternoon. It was Tuesday, just like every other Tuesday for the past 6 months. She carried her small black case in one hand and her purse in the other. The smell of gunpowder and cleaning oil hit her nose the moment she stepped inside. Some people found that smell unpleasant, but Sarah had grown to like it. It meant she was about to do something just for herself. The woman behind the counter looked up and smiled. Her name was Betty, and she had been working at the range for 15 years. She knew all the regular customers by name and habit. Sarah was one of the quiet ones who never caused trouble and always cleaned up after herself. Good. Afternoon, Sarah. Your usual lane today, Lane. 7, please, Betty. Same as always, Betty. Handed over the safety glasses and ear protection. Sarah had her own set at home, but she always used the range equipment. It felt more official that way. She signed the paperwork quickly and walked through the heavy door that separated the lobby from the shooting area. The range was longer than most people expected when they first saw it. 20 lanes stretched out in front of her, each one separated by concrete walls. Today, only 3 other lanes were being used. Lane 2 had an older man with a revolver. Lane 15 had 2 young guys who looked like they were trying to impress each other. Lane 12 had someone she had never seen before, but she did not pay much attention. Sarah set her case down at Lane 7 and opened it carefully. Inside was her small .22 caliber pistol. It was not fancy or expensive, but it was hers. She had bought it 8 months ago after working 3 double shifts in a row at the hospital. Being a nurse was rewarding, but some days were harder than others. Some days she needed something to help her mind focus on anything except sick patients and long hours. Her brother David had suggested the shooting range. He was in the Army and said target practice helped him think clearly. Sarah had been nervous at first. She had never held a gun before that day when David took her to try it, but something about the concentration required appealed to her. When she was aiming at a target, everything else disappeared. Her mind could not wander to work problems or personal stress. She loaded the small magazine with 10 bullets. Each one had to be pressed down carefully to fit properly. Her fingers had gotten more confident with this process over the months. At first she had been clumsy and dropped bullets on the floor. Now she could load the magazine without even looking. Sarah put on her eye protection and ear covers. The world became muffled and slightly yellow through the safety glasses. She pressed the button that sent a fresh paper target down to the 25-yard line. The target was white with black circles getting smaller toward the center. The center circle was only about 3 inches across. She had never hit it perfectly, but she kept trying. She raised the pistol with both hands, just like the range instructor had shown her months ago. Feet shoulder-width apart, arms extended but not locked, head straight. She tried to remember all the things she was supposed to do. Breathe slowly, squeeze the trigger straight back, follow through after the shot. The first shot rang out louder than she expected, even with ear protection. The paper target barely moved, but she could see through the scope viewer that her bullet had hit somewhere in the outer rings. Not terrible, but not great either. Sarah took her time between shots. She was not in a hurry. This was her time, her hour away from everything else. Shot number 2 hit closer to the center. Shot 3 was back to the outside. She sighed quietly and kept going. By the time she finished her first magazine, her target looked like someone had randomly thrown 10 darts at it. Some hits were high, some low, some left, some right. There was no pattern that made sense. Sarah pressed the button to bring the target back to her. The holes were scattered all over the place. She had watched other people at the range who could put all their shots in a tight group near the center. Sarah wondered what she was doing wrong. She had read books about shooting and watched videos online, but something was not clicking for her. Maybe she was thinking too much. Maybe she was trying too hard. Maybe she just was not good at this and should find a different hobby. But every Tuesday she came back anyway. Something kept drawing her to Lane 7 and the challenge of trying to improve. Sarah loaded her second magazine and sent out a fresh target. This time she tried to clear her mind completely. Just focus on the front sight. Squeeze slowly. Try not to move the gun when the shot goes off. The shots from her second magazine were slightly better, but still scattered. She could see improvement compared to 6 months ago, but it was slow progress. Some days she felt like she was getting worse instead of better. What Sarah did not notice was that the person in Lane 8 had been watching her technique. Not in a creepy way, but with the eye of someone who understood firearms and marksmanship. The man had been at the range for about 30 minutes. and he could see that Sarah had good instincts but some fundamental problems with her form. Sarah finished her second magazine and brought the target back again. Still not satisfied with her grouping, but at least a few shots had hit closer to the center. She was starting to feel the familiar mixture of frustration and determination that came with this hobby. She looked at her watch. Still had 30 minutes left in her hour session. Enough time for 2 more magazines if she took her time. Sarah reloaded and sent out her third target of the day. Maybe this would be the day she finally got it right. The afternoon sun was streaming through the small windows high up on the range walls. Dust particles floated in the light beams. The sound of gunfire from other lanes created a steady background rhythm. For Sarah, this had become her meditation, her way of finding peace in a busy world. She raised her pistol again and tried to make this magazine count. The man in Lane 8 was different from anyone Sarah had ever seen at Pine Valley Shooting Range. His name was Marcus Chen, though Sarah did not know this yet. He stood perfectly still when he was not shooting, like a statue carved from stone. Even when he moved, every motion seemed deliberate and controlled. Marcus was 34 years old with black hair cut short and neat. He was not the biggest man in the world, but his shoulders were broad and his arms showed the kind of muscle that came from years of hard training. His clothes were simple. Dark jeans, a plain gray t-shirt, and black boots that looked like they had walked many miles. Nothing about his outfit screamed for attention, but somehow he still stood out. When Marcus set up his equipment, he did it with the precision of someone who had done the same routine thousands of times. Every item had its place. His shooting bag was organized with military precision, magazines lined up in perfect rows, cleaning supplies arranged by size. Even his water bottle sat at exactly the right angle. Sarah glanced over at Lane 8 while she reloaded her pistol. The man there was preparing what looked like a very expensive rifle. It was black with a scope that probably cost more than Sarah made in a month. She had seen hunting rifles before, but this looked different, more technical. More serious. Marcus noticed Sarah looking but did not acknowledge it. He was used to people staring at his equipment. The rifle was a custom-built precision weapon that he had used during his military service. Most civilians had never seen anything like it outside of movies. He loaded his magazine with 5 rounds. Each bullet was hand-loaded to exact specifications. Marcus did not buy ammunition from a store like most people. He made his own, measuring every grain of powder, checking every case for defects. When your life might depend on where a bullet goes, you do not leave anything to chance. Sarah watched as Marcus raised his rifle to shooting position. His stance was different from anything she had seen before. His feet were positioned at odd angles, his body twisted slightly to the left. It looked uncomfortable, but he held the position without any sign of strain. The first shot from Lane 8 made Sarah jump slightly. It was louder and sharper than the sound from her small pistol. Through the corner of her eye, she saw Marcus work the bolt of his rifle smoothly and prepare for his second shot. There was no hurry in his movements, no wasted motion. Marcus fired 4 more shots in the next 2 minutes. Each shot sounded exactly the same. The same volume, the same sharp crack echoing off the concrete walls. Sarah found herself timing her own shots around his, waiting for the brief quiet moments between his rounds. When Marcus finished his first 5-shot group, he pressed the button to bring his target back from the 100-yard line. Sarah could not see his target clearly from her position, but she noticed he studied it for a long time. He made some notes in a small book, then sent the target back out. Sarah tried to focus on her own shooting, but she kept noticing things about the man in Lane 8. The way he controlled his breathing between shots. How he never seemed to rush or get frustrated. The fact that he had not looked at his phone even once since arriving. Most people at the range were friendly and talkative. They shared stories about their guns, asked questions about each other's equipment, and generally treated the place like a social club. Marcus was different. He had nodded politely to Betty when he signed in, but since then he had not spoken to anyone. Sarah finished her third magazine and brought her target back to examine it. Still scattered all over the place. A few good shots mixed in with several complete misses. She felt her usual frustration building. Why was this so difficult for her? She was a smart person. She could start an IV on a difficult patient in a moving ambulance. She could remember dozens of medical procedures and drug interactions. But she could not seem to put 10 bullets in the same place on a paper target. She looked over at Marcus again. He was loading his second magazine with the same careful precision as the first. Each bullet was placed into the rifle individually, not loaded from a magazine like most people did. Sarah wondered what kind of shooting he was doing that required such extreme care. Marcus felt Sarah watching him but did not mind. He had been observing her technique for the past 20 minutes, not out of rudeness but from professional habit. After 12 years in the military, he automatically assessed the skills of anyone around him with a weapon. It was not something he could turn off. What Marcus saw in Sarah was potential being held back by several basic technical problems. Her grip was too tight, causing the gun to shake. She was pulling the trigger with too much finger, which pushed her shots to the left. Her breathing was irregular, and she was trying too hard to aim instead of letting the shot break naturally. But Marcus also saw something that could not be taught. Sarah had determination. Despite her obvious frustration with her poor results, she kept trying. She made small adjustments between shots, attempting to improve. Most people would have given up or blamed their equipment by now. Marcus finished his second 5-shot group and brought the target back. This group was tighter than the first, with all 5 shots touching each other in the center ring. He made more notes in his book and prepared for his third group. Sarah loaded her 4th magazine of the day. She was starting to feel tired, and tired shooting was usually worse shooting. Her arms were getting heavy from holding the pistol extended for so long. Maybe she should call it a day after this magazine. As she raised her pistol for the first shot of magazine number 4, Sarah heard Marcus fire again from lane 8. The sound was becoming familiar now, like background music to her own shooting session. She wondered what his targets looked like up close. Probably perfect little groups right in the center. Sarah squeezed off her first shot of the new magazine. It felt good leaving the gun, but when she looked through the scope viewer, she could see it had hit low and to the right. She sighed and prepared for shot number 2. Marcus heard the sigh from lane 7. He recognized the sound of someone fighting against themselves, trying too hard to force good results instead of letting them happen naturally. He had heard that same frustrated sigh from countless students over the years. Marcus Chen had been watching Sarah Martinez for 23 minutes now. Not in a creepy way, but the way a professional watches someone who needs help but does not know it yet. In his 12 years as a Navy SEAL, Marcus had trained hundreds of new recruits. He could spot shooting problems from 50 yards away. Sarah had 3 main issues holding her back. First, she was gripping her pistol too tight. Her knuckles were white every time she raised the gun. That tension traveled up her arms and made the weapon shake slightly. Second, she was using too much of her trigger finger. Instead of using just the pad of her index finger, she was pulling with the first joint. This pushed every shot to the left. Third, her breathing was all wrong. She would hold her breath for too long, then gasp for air right when she needed to be steady. But Marcus also saw things that impressed him. Sarah never gave up. After every bad shot, she took a moment to think about what went wrong. She made small adjustments to her stance and grip between rounds. Most people just kept doing the same wrong thing over and over. Sarah was trying to learn and improve. Marcus fired his third group of 5 shots. Each bullet went exactly where he intended it to go. The rifle barely moved in his hands. Years of training had made the process automatic. Load, aim, breathe, squeeze, follow through. He had done it so many times that his body knew what to do without his mind getting involved. He brought his target back from the 100-yard line. All 5 shots were clustered in a group smaller than a quarter coin. The center of the target looked like someone had used a hole punch on it. Marcus made notes in his shooting log. Wind direction, temperature, humidity, and exactly where each shot had hit. This kind of precision shooting was different from combat shooting. In combat, you needed to hit your target fast under terrible conditions. People were shooting back at you. Explosions were going off nearby, and your heart was beating so hard you could hear it inside your helmet. Precision shooting was about perfection under controlled conditions. Marcus had been doing both kinds of shooting for most of his adult life. He joined the Navy when he was 18 years old. 3 years later, he tried out for SEAL training. Out of 200 men who started the program, only 23 finished. Marcus was one of them. During his SEAL career, Marcus had served in Afghanistan, Iraq, and several other places that the government would not let him talk about. He had been a sniper, an instructor, and a team leader. For the last 4 years of his military service, his job was training new SEALs how to shoot accurately under pressure. Marcus loved teaching. There was something satisfying about taking someone who could barely hit a target and turning them into a precision marksman. He had a gift for seeing exactly what each student was doing wrong and knowing how to fix it. Some instructors yelled and criticized. Marcus preferred to be patient and encouraging. 2 years ago, Marcus retired from active duty. The military had been his whole life for so long that he was not sure what to do next. He tried working for a private security company, but the job felt empty after serving his country. He tried being a police officer, but small-town crime was boring compared to international operations. Now Marcus worked as a freelance shooting instructor and security consultant. He made good money teaching wealthy executives how to protect themselves. He also worked with local police departments, helping them improve their marksmanship training programs. But most of his students were already pretty good shooters who just wanted to get better. Sarah was different. She was starting from the beginning, making the same mistakes that every new shooter makes. But she had something that could not be taught. She had heart. She genuinely wanted to improve, and she was willing to work for it. Marcus finished his notes and loaded a fresh magazine. He was planning to shoot 2 more groups, then pack up and head home. But something about Sarah made him want to stick around a little longer. Sarah was starting her 5th magazine of the day. Her arms were getting tired, and tired shooting usually meant worse shooting. Marcus could see her struggling to hold the pistol steady. Her shots were getting more scattered, not better. This was a common problem with new shooters. They thought that practicing longer would automatically make them better. But practicing bad technique for hours just made the bad habit stronger. What Sarah needed was someone to show her the correct way to do things, then let her practice that. Marcus had trained enough people to recognize when someone was ready to accept help. Some shooters were too proud to admit they needed instruction. Others were so focused on their own methods that they could not listen to advice. But Sarah looked frustrated enough to be open to suggestions. The question was whether Marcus should offer help or mind his own business. He generally kept to himself these days. After years of working as part of a tight team, civilian life felt lonely sometimes. Most people could not understand the kind of experiences he had been through. It was easier to stay quiet and avoid the awkward conversations about his military service. But watching Sarah struggle reminded Marcus of why he had loved being an instructor. There was something special about that moment, when a student finally understood what they were doing wrong. The look of surprise and excitement, when their shots suddenly started hitting the center of the target. The confidence that came with mastering a difficult skill. Sarah finished her 5th magazine and brought the target back to examine it. Even from lane 8, Marcus could see that her shots were all over the place. Sarah stared at the target for a long moment, then shook her head in frustration. Marcus made a decision. He set down his rifle and walked over to the partition between lanes 7 and 8. Sarah was reloading magazines for another round of practice. She looked determined but discouraged. Marcus cleared his throat politely. Sarah looked up, surprised to see the quiet man from lane 8 standing there. Up close, she could see that his eyes were kind despite his serious expression. "Excuse me," Marcus said in a calm, steady voice. "I hope you do not mind me saying so, but I have been watching you shoot. You're working really hard over there." Sarah felt her cheeks get warm. Great, she thought. Another range expert, coming to tell her everything she was doing wrong. Sarah looked up at the man from lane 8 and felt her stomach tighten. Here it comes, she thought. Another know-it-all gun guy ready to tell her everything she was doing wrong. She had dealt with this before at the range. Men who assumed that because she was a woman, she needed their help whether she wanted it or not. But something about this man felt different. His voice was calm and respectful. His eyes were not looking at her with pity or amusement. Instead, he seemed genuinely interested in what she was trying to accomplish. "I am Marcus," he said, extending his hand for a handshake. "I used to train people in marksmanship, and I can see you have got good instincts. You are just fighting against a few technical issues." Sarah shook his hand cautiously. His grip was firm but not crushing, like some men did when they wanted to prove how strong they were. "My name is Sarah. And yes, I am definitely fighting against something. I have been coming here for 6 months and I still shoot like I am blindfolded." Marcus smiled slightly at her honesty. "That tells me you are paying attention to your results. Most people just blame the gun or the ammunition when their shots are scattered. The fact that you recognize there is a problem means you are already ahead of many shooters." Sarah felt surprised by his response. She had expected criticism, not encouragement. "What kind of training did you do?" she asked. "Military training mostly," Marcus replied. "I spent 12 years teaching people how to shoot accurately under difficult conditions. But the basics are the same whether you are in combat or on a peaceful range like this." Sarah studied Marcus more carefully. Now that he mentioned military service, she could see it in the way he stood and moved. There was a discipline and control about him that reminded her of the veteran patients she treated at the hospital. Marcus paused for a moment, then made an offer that would change everything. "Would you mind if I showed you something? I think you would be surprised how much better you could shoot with just a few small adjustments." Sarah hesitated. She had received plenty of unwanted advice from other shooters over the months. Usually it involved men taking over her gun and showing off their own shooting skills, while explaining why women were naturally bad at marksmanship. But Marcus had not tried to grab her weapon or talk down to her. "What kind of adjustments?" she asked carefully. "Small things," Marcus said. "How you hold the gun, how you use your trigger finger when you breathe during the shot. Nothing complicated, but they make a huge difference in where your bullets go." Sarah looked at her scattered target hanging from the retrieval line. Her latest group looked like someone had thrown darts at the paper while spinning in circles. Maybe it was time to admit she needed help. "Okay," she said slowly. "But I have to warn you. I have tried following advice before and it did not help much. That is probably because the advice was too complicated or not right for you specifically," Marcus replied. "Every shooter is different. What works for one person might not work for another. The key is finding what works for your body and your natural movements." Marcus glanced at Sarah's pistol lying on the shooting bench. It was a decent gun for a beginner. Nothing fancy but reliable and accurate enough for learning. "The problem was not the equipment. First thing I notice is your grip," Marcus said. "You are holding the gun like you are afraid it will jump out of your hands. That tension travels up your arms and makes everything shake." Sarah picked up her pistol and showed him her usual grip. Her knuckles were white from squeezing so hard. "I can see every muscle in your hands and arms working overtime," Marcus observed. "Try this instead. Hold the gun firmly but not desperately. Like you are holding a bird that you do not want to fly away but you also do not want to crush." Sarah adjusted her grip following his instruction. The gun felt more natural in her hands already. "Better," Marcus said. "Now let me see your trigger finger placement." Sarah showed him how she usually positioned her finger on the trigger. "There is the problem," Marcus said gently. "You are using too much finger. That pulls every shot to the left. Try using just the pad of your index finger right here." He demonstrated on his own hand without touching her weapon or invading her personal space. Sarah appreciated that he was teaching without taking over. Sarah adjusted her finger position. It felt awkward at first, but she could see the logic in what Marcus was explaining. "The third issue is breathing," Marcus continued. "I noticed you hold your breath for a long time, then gasp for air right when you need to be steady. That makes your whole body move at the worst possible moment." "What should I do instead?" Sarah asked. "Take a deep breath. Let half of it out. Then hold naturally while you aim and fire," Marcus explained. "Do not force yourself to hold your breath until you turn blue. Just pause your breathing at the natural stopping point." Sarah tried the breathing technique a few times without firing. It felt more relaxed than her usual method of holding her breath until her chest hurt. "These seem like simple things," Sarah said. "They are simple," Marcus agreed. "That is why they work. Shooting is not complicated. People make it complicated by overthinking everything. Your body already knows how to point at things and coordinate your movements. We just need to get your conscious mind out of the way." Sarah loaded a fresh magazine with 10 rounds. She was eager to try Marcus's suggestions, but also nervous about failing in front of someone who clearly knew what he was doing. Marcus seemed to sense her nervousness. "Take your time," he said. "There is no pressure here. This is just practice, and practice is supposed to be imperfect. That is how we learn." Sarah took her shooting stance and incorporated the grip changes Marcus had shown her. The gun felt more stable in her hands. She positioned her trigger finger carefully and took a controlled breath. The first shot surprised her with how smooth it felt. Instead of the jerky, violent recoil she was used to, the gun moved straight back in her hands and settled quickly back on target. "That felt different," she said, looking at Marcus with surprise. "It should," Marcus replied. "When you are not fighting against yourself, the gun behaves much better. Check your target." Sarah pressed the button to bring her target back from 25 yards. The bullet hole was still in the outer rings, but it was much closer to the center than her usual shots. "That is definitely better," she said with excitement in her voice. Marcus nodded approvingly. "Now try 9 more just like that one. Do not think about the results. Just focus on doing the same thing each time." Sarah fired her second shot using Marcus's technique. It felt even smoother than the first. The gun barely moved in her hands, and she could see through the scope viewer that this bullet had hit closer to the center ring. Her heart started beating faster with excitement. The third shot was her best yet. Sarah could hardly believe what was happening. After 6 months of scattered, frustrating shooting, she was suddenly hitting where she aimed. The changes Marcus suggested seemed so simple, but they were working like magic. "Keep going," Marcus encouraged. "You are doing exactly what I hoped you would do. Do not overthink it now. Just let your body repeat what it just learned." Sarah fired her 4th and 5th shots. Both hit near the center area of the target. She was breathing harder now. Not from effort, but from excitement. This was what she had been trying to achieve for months. Marcus watched Sarah's transformation with satisfaction. This was why he had loved being an instructor. There was something special about the moment when everything clicked for a student. Sarah was experiencing that breakthrough right now. "You are a natural at this," Marcus told her. "Your body wants to shoot accurately. You were just getting in your own way before." Sarah finished her magazine and brought the target back to examine it. 9 of her 10 shots were clustered in the center area of the target. It was not perfect, but it was better than anything she had accomplished in 6 months of trying. "I cannot believe this," Sarah said, staring at her target. "How is this even possible? I have been practicing for months and never shot this well." "That is because you were practicing the wrong things," Marcus explained. "You were working harder instead of working smarter. Sometimes we need someone outside our situation to see what we cannot see ourselves." Sarah looked at Marcus with new respect. He had helped her accomplish more in 10 minutes than she had managed in half a year. But she also felt a little embarrassed. Why had it taken so long for someone to show her these basic corrections? Marcus seemed to read her thoughts. "Do not feel bad about not knowing this stuff before. Everyone starts somewhere, and most people never get proper instruction. They just keep repeating the same mistakes over and over." Sarah reloaded her pistol for another try. She wanted to see if her improved shooting was just luck or if she could repeat it. Using Marcus's techniques again, she fired 10 more rounds. This group was even better than the first. 8 shots hit the center rings of the target. "This is incredible," Sarah said. "I actually feel like a real shooter now." "You were always a real shooter," Marcus replied. "You just needed to unlock your potential." As Sarah admired her target, Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. He walked back to Lane 8 and began unloading his precision rifle. It was a custom-built weapon that had cost him more than most people spent on a car. The rifle had been with him through multiple combat deployments and had never let him down. "Sarah," Marcus called out, "I want to try something different with you." Sarah turned to see Marcus approaching with his expensive rifle in his hands. Her eyes widened as she got a closer look at the weapon. It was obviously military-grade equipment. Nothing like the sporting rifles she had seen other people use at the range. "What are you doing?" she asked nervously. Marcus carefully checked that his rifle was unloaded, then held it out towards Sarah. "I want you to try shooting with this. Your technique is good now, and I think you will be amazed at what you can do with proper equipment." Sarah stared at the rifle like Marcus was offering her a priceless piece of art. "Are you completely insane? That thing probably costs more than my car. What if I drop it or break it somehow?" Marcus smiled at her reaction. This rifle was designed to be used by soldiers in combat. It has been dropped from helicopters, dragged through mud, and soaked in salt water. You are not going to hurt it by shooting it at a paper target. "But why would you let me use something so expensive?" Sarah asked. "You barely know me." "Because I can see that you have real potential," Marcus answered. "Most people never get a chance to shoot with precision equipment like this. I want to show you what you are truly capable of when everything works in your favor." Sarah looked at the rifle again. The scope alone probably cost more than everything in her gun case. The whole weapon looked like something from a science fiction movie. "I do not know how to use a rifle," Sarah protested. "I have only ever shot pistols." "The principles are the same," Marcus assured her. "Actually, rifles are easier to shoot accurately than pistols. You have more points of contact with your body, which makes everything more stable." Marcus showed Sarah how to hold the rifle properly. It was heavier than her pistol but balanced better. The stock fit against her shoulder naturally, and the scope brought the distant target into crystal clear focus. "This is like having superpowers," Sarah said, looking through the scope. "I can see every detail on the target." "That is the idea," Marcus replied. "Good equipment does not make up for poor technique, but it can help good technique reach its full potential." Marcus set up a fresh target at the 100-yard line, much farther than Sarah had ever attempted to shoot. Through the scope, the target looked close enough to touch. "Here is what we are going to do," Marcus said calmly. "I am going to step back and give you complete control. You are going to show me your natural shooting ability with this rifle. Do not try to do anything special, just be yourself." Sarah felt the weight of the expensive weapon in her hands. Part of her was terrified of making a mistake with Marcus's prized rifle, but another part was excited to see what she could accomplish with proper equipment. "The most important thing I can teach you today," Marcus said as he moved aside, "is that shooting is not about the gun. It is about the person holding it. This rifle is just a tool. You are the one who makes it accurate." Sarah took a deep breath and settled into shooting position. The rifle felt solid and confidence-inspiring in her hands. For the first time since she started coming to the range, she felt like she might actually know what she was doing. Sarah lifted Marcus's precision rifle and felt its weight settle against her shoulder. The weapon was much heavier than her small pistol, but somehow it felt more solid and stable in her hands. Through the powerful scope, the target at 100 yards looked crystal clear. She could see every detail of the paper, every ring perfectly outlined. "This is incredible," Sarah whispered. "I can see everything so clearly. It is like the target is right in front of me." Marcus stood a few steps behind her, close enough to help, but far enough away to give her complete control. His voice was calm and encouraging when he spoke. "That scope is military-grade optics," he explained. "It cost more than most people spend on their entire rifle setup. But remember, the scope does not shoot the bullet, you do. All it does is help you see where you want the bullet to go." Sarah practiced moving the rifle smoothly from target to target. The weapon tracked naturally with her movements. Everything about it felt more precise than her pistol. Even the trigger was different. It barely required any pressure at all. "The trigger on this rifle breaks at exactly 2 pounds, Marcus said. Your pistol probably needs about 6 pounds of pressure. Less pressure means less movement when you fire." Sarah aimed at the center of the target and practiced her breathing. In through her nose, half out through her mouth, then hold naturally. The crosshairs in the scope barely moved when she controlled her breathing properly. "Perfect," Marcus observed. "Your breathing control has improved dramatically since we started. Now remember everything we worked on. Grip firm but not tight. Trigger finger placement just on the pad, squeeze straight back slowly." Sarah settled into her shooting position. Through the scope, the black center ring of the target looked huge. She had never been able to see a target this clearly before. Taking a controlled breath, she let half of it out and paused naturally. The crosshairs lined up perfectly on the center of the target. Sarah began squeezing the trigger slowly and steadily, just like Marcus had taught her. The shot surprised her when it went off, exactly like it was supposed to. The rifle pushed back against her shoulder with authority, but it did not jump around wildly like she expected. The recoil was strong but controlled, and the scope settled right back on the target. "Outstanding," Marcus called out excitedly. He was looking through his own spotting scope to see where her bullet had hit. "That is a perfect 9-ring hit, just 1 ring out from dead center." Sarah stared through her scope in amazement. After months of shots scattered all over the target with her pistol, she had just hit the 9 ring at 100 yards on her very first try with a rifle. "How did I do that?" she asked in disbelief. "That has to be luck." "That was not luck," Marcus said firmly. "That was proper technique combined with quality equipment. This is what you have been capable of all along. You just needed the right tools and instruction." Sarah felt a rush of excitement and confidence she had never experienced at the shooting range. For the first time since she started coming here, she felt like a real shooter instead of someone pretending to be one. "Let me try another shot," Sarah said eagerly. "I want to see if I can do it again." Marcus smiled at her enthusiasm. "Take your time and do exactly what you just did. Do not change anything or try to do better. Just repeat the same process." Sarah loaded another round into the rifle chamber. This time she felt more confident about everything. She knew what to expect from the trigger, the recoil, and the scope. Settling into position felt natural now. Her second shot felt even smoother than the first. Sarah could sense it was a good shot the moment the trigger broke. Everything had worked together perfectly. Even better, Marcus announced with genuine excitement in his voice. That one is an X-ring hit, dead center of the bullseye. Sarah looked through the scope and saw the bullet hole right in the middle of where she had aimed. She had put the bullet exactly where she intended it to go. After 6 months of frustration and scattered shots, this felt like a miracle. I cannot believe this is really happening, Sarah said, her voice filled with wonder. Believe it, Marcus replied. You are doing everything right now. Good stance, proper grip, correct breathing, smooth trigger control. This is not magic, Sarah, this is skill. Sarah fired her third shot with growing confidence. This one hit close to her second shot, right near the center of the target. She was actually creating a group of shots instead of random hits all over the paper. The fourth shot was just as good as the third. Sarah was starting to understand what Marcus meant about letting her body repeat what it had learned. Instead of thinking about every little detail, she was starting to trust her muscles to remember the correct movements. Her fifth and final shot completed a group that would have been impressive for an experienced shooter. All 5 bullet holes were clustered in the center rings of the target, with 3 of them touching the bullseye. Marcus pressed the button to bring the target back from 100 yards so Sarah could see her results up close. When the target reached them, Sarah stared at it in complete amazement. The 5 bullet holes were grouped in an area about the size of a quarter. It was tighter than anything she had ever achieved in hundreds of rounds with her pistol at much closer range. This cannot be real, Sarah said, touching the bullet holes with her finger. This morning I could barely hit the target at 25 yards. Now I am shooting groups like this at 100 yards. It is very real, Marcus assured her. And it happened because you have natural ability that was being held back by technical problems. Once we fixed those problems and gave you proper equipment, your true potential showed itself. Sarah looked at Marcus with deep gratitude and newfound respect. He had not just taught her some shooting tips. He had shown her that she was capable of achieving things she never thought possible. What kind of instructor were you in the military? Sarah asked. You obviously know things that most people never learn. Marcus began cleaning his rifle while he considered how to answer. I was in special operations, he said simply. My job was training people to shoot accurately when their lives depended on it. Sarah sensed there was much more to Marcus's story than he was revealing, but she could tell this was not something he discussed easily. She had worked with enough veterans at the hospital to recognize someone who had experienced things most people could never understand. The important thing, Marcus continued, is what you discovered about yourself today. You have real talent for precision shooting. The question is whether you want to develop it further. Sarah looked at her target one more time, then back at Marcus. She knew her answer already. Sarah held Marcus's business card in her hands as they both began packing up their equipment. The afternoon had been like nothing she had ever experienced. In just a few hours, she had gone from being a frustrated beginner to shooting tight groups at 100 yards. The transformation felt almost unreal. Marcus, she said as she carefully placed her pistol back in its case. I have to ask you something. What you did for me today was incredible. You took a complete stranger and helped her discover something she never knew she could do. Why did you decide to help me? Marcus paused in cleaning his rifle. That was a fair question, and Sarah deserved an honest answer. He had been asking himself the same thing. After 2 years of keeping to himself, why had he reached out to this woman he had never met before? You reminded me of something I had forgotten, Marcus said quietly. When I was an instructor in the military, there was nothing I enjoyed more than watching someone discover their potential. These past 2 years, I have been teaching people who already knew how to shoot pretty well. They just wanted to get a little better. He continued packing his equipment while he talked. But you were different. You were starting from the beginning, making all the classic mistakes, but you never gave up. You kept trying to improve even when nothing seemed to be working. That kind of determination is rare. Sarah felt touched by his words, but she was also curious about his background. The way he handled weapons, his teaching ability, and the expensive equipment all suggested he was much more than just a regular military instructor. Marcus, she said carefully, when you said special operations, what exactly did that mean? You obviously have training that goes way beyond what most soldiers receive. Marcus finished securing his rifle in its case before answering. He had learned to be careful about sharing details of his military service. Most civilians did not understand what special operations really meant, and the conversations often became uncomfortable. "I was in the Navy," Marcus said simply. "Special warfare community." Sarah waited for him to say more, but Marcus seemed reluctant to elaborate. She could tell this was not something he talked about easily. As a nurse, she had worked with many military veterans over the years. She recognized the signs of someone who had seen and done things that were difficult to discuss. "I do not want to pry into anything personal," Sarah said gently. "I am just trying to understand how someone gets to be as skilled as you obviously are." Marcus looked at Sarah for a long moment. There was something about her genuine curiosity and respectful approach that made him want to share more than he usually did. "I was a Navy SEAL for 12 years, Marcus said quietly. "The last 4 years of my service, my primary job was training new SEALs in advanced marksmanship and precision shooting." Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. Navy SEAL. She had heard of them, of course. Everyone knew they were the most elite special forces in the military. She had just spent the afternoon being taught by one of the most highly trained soldiers in the world. "Oh my goodness," Sarah said, staring at Marcus with new eyes. "I had no idea. You are like incredibly elite military." Marcus smiled at her reaction. "I am just a regular person who had some unusual training experiences. The important thing is not what I used to do, but what happened here today. You discovered that you have real talent for precision shooting?" Sarah shook her head in amazement. "No wonder you made it look so easy. You probably trained people who were already expert shooters." "Actually," Marcus said, "many of the people I trained were just regular soldiers who needed to learn precision shooting for specific missions. Some of them started out worse than you did today. What made the difference was their willingness to learn and practice correctly." Sarah looked at her target one more time. The tight group of bullet holes still seemed impossible to believe. This morning she had been a frustrated beginner who could barely hit a target at 25 yards. Now she had proof that she could shoot precisely at 100 yards. "Marcus," she said, looking at his business card again, "when you said you run precision shooting courses, are those for people like me or for people who already know what they are doing?" "Both, actually," Marcus replied. "I have classes for beginners who want to learn the fundamentals correctly from the start. I also have advanced courses for experienced shooters who want to take their skills to the next level." Sarah felt excited about the possibility of learning more, but also a little intimidated. What if today was just a fluke? What if she could not repeat this performance? Marcus seemed to sense her uncertainty. "Sarah," he said seriously, "what happened today was not beginner's luck. You have natural coordination, good focus, and the determination to keep trying when things get difficult. Those are the most important qualities for becoming a precision shooter." He shouldered his rifle case and picked up his equipment bag. "The important thing is that you now know what you are capable of. Whether you decide to pursue it further is completely up to you." As they walked toward the exit of Pine Valley Shooting Range, Sarah found herself thinking about how much her life had changed in just one afternoon. This morning, she had been ready to give up on shooting as a hobby. Now she was considering taking advanced classes from a former Navy SEAL instructor. "Marcus," she said as they reached the parking lot, "I want to ask you one more thing. You could probably charge a lot of money for private instruction from someone with your background. Why are you offering to help me continue learning?" Marcus stopped beside his truck and turned to face Sarah. "Because you remind me why I loved being an instructor in the first place. Teaching someone who has real potential and genuine enthusiasm is its own reward. Money is just money, but helping someone discover what they are truly capable of, that is something special." Sarah felt grateful beyond words. A complete stranger had taken the time to help her discover a hidden talent and offered to continue teaching her. It was the kind of generosity she rarely encountered in everyday life. "Thank you, Marcus," she said sincerely. "This has been the most amazing afternoon I have had in years. I will definitely call you about those weekend courses." Marcus smiled and got into his truck. As he drove away, Sarah stood in the parking lot, holding his business card and thinking about how sometimes the most extraordinary things happen on the most ordinary days. She had come to the range for her usual Tuesday practice session and ended up discovering a whole new version of herself.